to all of you a proper introduction to start with. Helen Brown, you are Chief Human Resources Officer at Stack Infra. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Leslie Dehant, you are Director of Human Resources at KPMG France. And Maria, you are Executive Vice President, HR Group at Bureau Veritas. Thank you for being with us today. So based on the data we've just heard, younger generations are redefining what they expect from their employers. For many young people today, culture, values, and purpose often matter as much as career prospects or even pay. So, my first question to you is the following. Have you observed a real difference between the way young people see company culture and how this manifests? And is company culture still a strong differentiator, in the job or talent market? Helen?
Absolutely, first of all. And to give a bit of context as to why, Stack Infrastructure builds data centers. And that means that the people in our business come from engineering, their architects, the mathematicians, their construction, and their technical operations. Now, those aren't necessarily sectors where you would think that people were big on culture. And that is a challenge that we face, is that we have leadership that are coming in from these sectors where culture was really just about going and having a drink with your mates. And they were bringing new people into the company who absolutely want to understand more about the diversity of the company, how we're sustaining the buildings that we're putting in place. And to kind of bridge that gap between those different cultures, we have something called Foundations for the Future, where we bring together the leaders in the business and those people that are new to their careers. And this year I found it particularly interesting because, yes, they're looking for diversity in the workplace, they're looking for how we are impacting the societies around us. But what we've just heard here really resonated in that they are looking for training of skills, but more than that, they're looking for training of behaviors, how to build those networks within the organization and across their careers. And they're looking to leaders to do that. So it's about training our leaders as much as that younger generation to be really authentic and to build that behaviors within themselves to be able to pass on to that younger generation.
Very helpful. Thank you very much, Helen. Leslie, company culture.
Yes. Well, the world is changing fast with a huge impact on young people, and we believe that culture is really our foundation. Young people really want companies to take real commitments on diversity, but also on positive impact on society. So at KPMG, we have chosen 3 years ago to become a mission-driven company with a strong mobilization of our employees. So they are really attached to our unique culture, Together for Better, and human DNA. And clearly these values help us attract talents. And it is reflected in concrete actions such as our program for High School for Success, which helped over 3,000 young people in priority neighborhoods with the help of over 2,000 employees every year.
Thank you very much for that. Maria, give us your perspective at Bureau Veritas.
Yeah, so Bureau Veritas we're actually experiences this cultural and generational change firsthand. Only 10 years ago, we had less than 50% of our organization that were digital native, and today we are already at 70%, and we've projected that by 2035 we'll be at 95%, quite impressive. And we know what it means, right? It's that the expectations that our employees are also changing. Previous generations looked at career more from stability. I think seniority in a company was valued. Typical benefits were what they really value. In terms of leadership, they were used to hierarchical, very directive type of leadership. Now, fast forward, right? I think the new generations, they're looking for something else. Fast progression, right? They want more project-based opportunities. They are expecting a leadership that is collaborative, transparent, right? They care much more about purpose. So Do we think that culture is a differentiation? Yes, it's the differentiator, but the definition of culture is changing. A few years ago, we were talking about corporate culture as some perks or work-life balance, right? And now we're talking about purpose, transparency, and as Celica said, really engineering growth and development opportunities. So at Veritas, we are seeing that competitive advantage because we are looking every year, we have our engagement survey, and there's a few questions that ask exactly that, about purpose, about clarity and transparency of communication, and about career development. And over the last 2 years, we've improved in all those questions from 5 to 9 points. And when we look at voluntary attrition, our attrition has reduced by 120 basis points in the same period of time. So hugely correlated.
So leading to tangible results here. Helen, could you maybe share with us an example where prioritizing inclusion and fairness gave your company a competitive advantage? It's not just fluff what we're talking about here.
No, it really isn't, because we don't get backing for fluff. So we have to really, to get in sort of the investment that we need to put these practices in place, we really need to embed it in the sort of the company and align it to our objectives. So Charlotte, yeah, I think the most recent example of being able to see that fairness is a competitive advantage is in our Stack Academy program. And this has been going for a number of years in Italy. It's where we bring in apprentices. As I said, this is a very skills-depleted market. So bringing apprentices in and training them up between 18 months and 3 years. Now, historically, I hate to say that that was a predominantly male-orientated cohort. And this year, we were really committed to being far more diverse and opening that up to a broader spectrum of people. And working with a fantastic company, we were able to attract a much broader base of candidates, over 2,000 for the 13 positions that were available, from Switzerland and from Norway as well. And the results speak for themselves. Out of that 2,000, 38% of those were women, which is in our industry is unheard of. And 23 of those came from underprivileged socioeconomic backgrounds. And the reason that gives us an advantage is that by being fairer in the way that we're attracting talent, by doing that through skills, that removes obviously a lot of the gender bias we've seen in the past. But it means we now have a talent pipeline of people that's very skilled and enables us to get to market much faster and more safely, which is a priority in our sector than our competitors.
Thank you very much for that. Now, Leslie, what metrics or indicators do you use to ensure fairness and inclusion are delivering tangible results? I mean, how do you measure it?
Yes, we track progress with clear indicators. It's 38 women in leadership. It is, of course, the equality index in France that is mandatory with 86, but it's also a percentage of people with disability. But we monitor promotion rates, for example, as well as attendance to high potential programs, because diversity really drives long-term performance and innovation. We strongly believe that diverse teams perform better, are more creative, and make customers happier. We also support women in tech because they are less represented. And in this area, we believe that the rise of AI could be a real opportunity for women to lead, as success depends more on soft skills and critical thinking than coding.
Well, that's great news for us, isn't it, right? Fantastic. Maria, now, what about diversity in technical teams at Bureau Veritas? Because you're also in an industry that's, male-dominated. And tell us about, amidst all this disruption we are seeing here, and maybe a certain backlash against, inclusion, policies and strategies, etc. How do you future-proof your talent amid all the disruptions we are seeing? Generational disruption, we talked about the AI disruption, there's the geopolitical and political disruption, there's so much going on. It's very hard to predict the future at the moment, it's so uncertain. So how do you future-proof your workforce? And I've mentioned the fact that there's possibly a lack of diversity in some industries, including yours. So how do you feminize your company and the sector overall?
Yeah.
There's a lot to do, clearly.
A lot to unpack. I'll try to be fast. Now, let me start with the diversity part, right? I think that when you really believe that performance and innovation are fueled by diverse ways of looking at things, you make it your strategic goal, right? And I was reflecting about the journey that Veritas went through, because only 10 years back, we have 0 members of the executive that were women, and 75% were same nationality, right? And fast forward to today, we have a CEO that is a woman, we have 30% of our ExCom that are women, and we have 8 nationalities in the ExCom, right? So I feel that we went from being a French company working international to actually being an international company that is rooted and very proud to be headquartered in France, right? That's a difference. And if I think now about future-proofing the talent, this is the question that actually keep us all awake at night, I think, because the world is changing, everything is fast-paced. But I can think of 3 things that we can do. The first one is the traditional. If you know your strategy and you know that there are certain skills that you need, you have that crystal ball, then you can actually take actions to do that. For us, for example, we have probably only 2. We're thinking about sustainability. We want it to be at the core of what we do. So we are taking actions like the academies, the structured training programs, things like that. We're also looking for AI, cyber. But you can only do that for so many capabilities because you don't have the future. So what we are also trying to do is to actually probably teach the capability that we'll need for the future, which is this agility, learning agility and adaptability. And how to do that, first, what we're trying to do is we're trying to embed it in our culture. We just designed our new leadership framework, and part of the behaviors that we're going to be embedding in the culture is about challenging the status quo, daring to innovate, right? So you make it part of how you work. And the second one is a bit more tactical, but we're trying to shift from discrete training programs to build capabilities to a more continuous, bite-sized learning opportunities that you can embed in the day-to-day of our employees, right? And then the third thing, that strategies you can do, I think, to future-proof your talents is really about career opportunities. It's about removing barriers for people to do different jobs, right? Try to move away from the traditional career path. And I'm a big fan of this because I'm a product of that, right? I'm an engineer by background, started a new product development, moved to operations, then did marketing, HR, and operations again. So I moved, I was sharing, I moved 10 times, I relocated, right? But it doesn't matter how many times you move or change. What matters is that makes you be comfortable with not knowing everything. You know, it makes you be comfortable with the fact that your ability to learn is more important than what actually you know.
Thank you very much for that, Maria. Helen, we have discussed with you the competitive advantage of inclusion and fairness. If social impact is not seen as a nice to have, but as a business imperative, I mean, how does that mindset influence the way you hire, you train, and you retain talent? How do you go about it?
Yeah, Charlotte. I think it's how you position social impact in your organization. When it's not just a nice to have, but it's deeply embedded, it fundamentally changes the operating model. And what you go from is a company that, I hope quite rightly, is looking after the society in which you're doing business. And that changes to actually, let's focus on ensuring that our workforce are leaving the organization with far greater skill sets than they arrived with, and therefore they're empowering and growing the economy through that. So you start focusing far more broadly than just, social impact is something that, we should be doing and it's a nice to have. And I think that, really empowering the workforce to grow the economy is shown in 3 ways. Hiring, we've already mentioned the academy, but we also support, have a number of scholarships for women who want to study STEM subjects. in the training, as I've mentioned, it's a highly competitive market with very few skills. So upskilling people from even before they come into the organization through apprenticeship and internship programs and then right the way through their career is an imperative. It's a business imperative for us to do that. And then on retaining, I think that's about connecting purpose. The people that are building these data centers, I mean, what they're doing is powering hospitals, it's powering governments and finance, it's powering entertainment. In fact, everyone in this room who's currently looking at your mobile phone is powering that too. And when you're part of an organization that's actually building that infrastructure, it really helps to link that purpose, that social impact to every part of their lives.
Thank you very much. Now, the theme of our forum this year is courage. So I have the following question for you, and I'm going to ask you to be brave in answering that question, actually. It's what I've mentioned earlier, this sort of backlash, this pressure across the world, in some parts of the world, more than others, on equity and inclusion and DI policies, etc. So tell us about your experience. I mean, how do you sense it? I mean, how is it manifesting from your perspective? And importantly, how are you resisting? Leslie.
I start? Yes, of course, we definitely see economic, geopolitical, and regulatory measures as well. Pressures intensifying, but we stay committed to inclusion, and how we are resisting is by continuing taking concrete actions. We have signed for the second time this year the LGBT+ Charter, the Parental Charter with measures for family, like the 4 days a week paid 5 for young parents. It's about measures for employee caregivers, where we give 30 days a year that are paid with administrative support and psychological support. And this year we will focus on mental health with the signature again of the governmental charter and trainings. So it's really about, I mean, inclusive leadership is refusing to back down on equity, even when times are tough.
Yeah, I think...
yes,
yeah.
Why don't we have a round of applause for that, actually? Yeah.
I think, Charlotte, I know we discussed this, and my colleagues here will definitely agree that it's about embedding it in the business as well. So, and about measuring at board level. Now, we're in an economy at the moment in Europe that all of us have been struggling a little bit, and it then becomes very easy to cut those budgets, doesn't it, in these areas that we care so passionately about. And I think particularly in the technology sector, where you're backed quite often by private equity investors, that pressure becomes acute. So it really is about measuring what you do, aligning that to the business, and reporting it at board level in the same way as we would do any other division of our company. And we see that it's easier in Europe because, to your point, so much now is a requirement to be able to report on, our social equity, our sustainability. That makes it easier. But still, we need to be able to show results. And some of those, I think you were talking about nationalities. We're in 8 countries and we have 29 nationalities. So when you talk about all the value that comes from a diverse workforce, we certainly see that. We grew 30% last year. So this is a highly, high rapid growth industry. And within that, even though it's sort of predominantly construction, 27% of the workforce are women, and there's 50% of us on the board are women, which is really amazing. I don't think I've ever worked anywhere where it's been that, so I'm very proud of that. Nothing to do with me. I only arrived 3 months ago, but it's a good thing all the same. And I think, so it's about that, resisting that pressure is about anchoring inclusion in your business performance and your reporting of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Maria.
on our side, actually, those pressures, because we always have pressures, right? Some people think, some stakeholders think you're doing too much. Some think that you're not doing enough. But we all know what happened in January, right, with the executive order in the United States, and how some companies receive a letter to basically question their practices in D&I in the United States, right? So for us, actually, I would say that pressure became a positive force, because it forced us to actually bring it and put it at the table at the board. So we had a session about it, and it made us look at why are we doing it. We went back to the purpose, to why are these policies in place, why are these initiatives in place, and actually the result of those discussions were that we're not going to change our values. One of our value is open and inclusive, and it stays the same. We're not going to change our policies. We're not going to change our leadership development. The only thing we did is we are always, of course, compliant in every country we work in, and we went and tweaked a bit some of the KPIs that we had in the US, because you could not have quotas, and we made sure that we were compliant there. Nothing else changed, and I think it reinforced our commitment to DEI.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you very much. One last question, maybe. There again, another round of applause. One last question, maybe a key lesson or maybe a message for leaders out there. I'm sure we have many business leaders in the room and leaders from other walks of life, by the way. A key lesson about balancing people, purpose, and performance, of course, you know, we're in the world of business at the end of the day. So what would be the key lesson then, or maybe your key message to the audience with regards to that?
God, just one. I mean, there's so many. I've been learning these lessons for 35 years. I'm not at the end of it yet. I hope not. So one lesson, okay. If you want to build an organization that is going to win over decades and not just the next few quarters, then I really think it's important to focus on fairness. Purpose tells us what we're doing, but fairness really helps us as employees feel that. And when we feel something, we are automatically far more invested in it.
That's a very valid point, actually, because it's hard to define fairness, although we all have a sort of sense of what it actually is. Thank you very much for that, Helen. Leslie.
I will just echo what Helen just said, because I also think fairness is the key. It's even a condition for success. It aligns individual and collective ambitions. It offers different views. And I think it helps build a fairer society. So typically, we align our strategy with our values and mission as we help companies transform, putting people and inclusion at the center.
Thank you for that. Maria.
So maybe I'm going to be a bit provocative, and I would say that to me is that let's stop talking about balance, because when you talk about balance, you're almost introducing trade-offs, right? You need to, if I focus too much on results, it means that, you know, I'm not doing enough for people, but if I'm actually too much focused on the purpose, then my performance will deteriorate, right? And I think that, you know, we need to integrate the three. Each of them is amplifying the other, right? If you have a clear and inspiring purpose, you'll be able to attract and retain your talent. If you have engaged teams, they will perform and they will have excellence, operational excellence. And if you have good financial results, then you'll have the independence and your ability to invest and the other two, right? So for me, there is this virtuous circle, right, where we integrate the three and each of them amplifies each other.
We have a bit of time left, and I'd like to ask you, and this was not in the script, okay, so you're going to have to talk from the heart, courage, le cœur, right, right now. But as leaders yourselves in your respective fields of human resources, etc., what would you say has been your guiding star, maybe principle, to make sure that fairness is part of what you do or the company's DNA? What's been your driving force amid this fairly tumultuous time that we're living at the moment?
I think I've learned this from some of the brilliant leaders that I've had the real fortune to work with. And for me, that was about learning authenticity wasn't a weakness. You know, when I saw people that I really respected opening up and saying, I don't have the answer. And this is quite early on in my career. I don't have the answer, I'll go away and find that. Or I don't have the answer, but I have an idea, what do you think? it showed me that to be really authentic, to be open, and to be brave enough. We're talking about courage here, to have the courage to admit you don't know something, but work collaboratively with those around you to find a solution. I think that's given that to me, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. So when you're saying authenticity, I'm hearing humility here as well. The humility to say, I'm not sure, I don't know, I'm going to try to learn, I'm going to try to do better. Very inspiring. Leslie.
Well, I would say that my biggest value as a person and a leader is justice. And that comes back to fairness. But what I try to do is always see facts, figures, take a step back just to make sure that I'm not biased in all the decisions that I make. So that's how I work, yeah.
So justice and questioning yourself.
Yeah.
Making yourself, I think it's accountability. I think that's what it is.
That could be.
Maria.
So for me, I think there was some experience that really marked, I think, who I am today, and it happened in Peru, in Iquitos. So you asked us to be courageous and be personal, so here you go. I really experienced firsthand the link between education, violence, and poverty, right? And it really made me see the meaning of privilege and the fact that not everyone is born with the same opportunities. And it made me want to make sure that along my career, and I was not in HR at the time, I was in operations, but I wanted to be removing barriers to equal opportunities. Yeah, and so when I then had the first leadership role in HR, the first thing that I did was, for example, I created a gender-blind candidate selection. I asked all my talent teams to remove the notion of name, the gender, even nationality from the internal CVs that we were reviewing to select line managers. And we went in 6 months from 9% to 24% women, right? So that impact is really what's driving me today, up to today.
So I guess the value here is humanity, understanding that everyone who comes to work for your company has a story and should feel that they are taken as they are, I guess, and welcome as they are. Many thanks to all of you, our inspiring leaders here on stage, and many thanks most of all for your commitments, I guess, and for remaining on course, despite the climate at the moment. Many thanks to all of you, Helen, Leslie, and Maria.